Around the very time the agnostic Doyle was first writing about Holmes, he jumped on the passing bus called Spiritualism. Seances, Ouija boards, tarot cards, taking snaps of dead loved ones, communicating with the dead. Raised a Catholic, he didn't see any conflict with spiritualism and mainstream religion, and they both believed in the afterlife. That was good enough for him. Only the churches didn't see it that way. It was God and his emissary that gave out the key to your room in eternity. This didn't happen to be amongst the pages of his opus, called Spiritualism. Doyle would spend the next 13 years of his life touring the world, lecturing and publishing 10 books on spiritualism, travelling in an estimated 75,000 miles in Britain, Europe, North America. 3 years into that world tour, 1920, he and his wife Jean had Australasia on their radar. By now it's fair to say his name was somewhat of a divisive one. Vast tracts of the public now considered him figuratively and literally away with the fairies. Be my guest. Read on. Notoriously being the chief spruiker of the well-known Cottingley Fairies photos, one of history's most famous fakes. And then there are also the seances and speaking with the dead, which appeared to have done its dash around the turn of the century, only to be raised from the afterlife on the back of 2 cataclysms. The death toll in World War I, where per capita New Zealand was impacted greatly. Then, on home shores, the Spanish flu, as it was called, hit. On that score, the Doyles would suffer the ultimate suffering one could as a parent. Arthur's son from his first marriage, Kingsley, was an army captain attached to a medical battalion. He would survive the shells, gas and bullets of both the Somme and Passchendaele, only to succumb to influenza whilst working on the wards in 1918. His brother, Brigadier General Innes, met a similar fate the following year. That's Sir Arthur at his graveside. In their grief, Arthur and Jean sought to communicate with Kingsley via a medium of psychic photography. And these are real photos, in case you're wondering. Well, not really real or genuine, but you get the gist. Faced with loved ones being buried at 25,000 kilometres from home, the world was awash with grieving families seeking answers, closure. Doyle proposed that religion and science had no definitive answers as to the fate of the dead. As he put it, the question of where are our boys? Spiritualism, on the other hand, did. He had gained solace in knowing his son and brother were on the other side doing their thing. Others could too. Regardless of what you think of this mumbo-jumbo, and Doyle's motivations were entirely sincere and philanthropic. He certainly didn't need the money. When he died in 1930, his wealth, in modern terms, was put at around 80 million buckaroos. Entry money to his lectures were donated straight back to local spiritualist causes. This juncture in his life, Conan Doyle had grown tired of his detective creation. In 1893, he'd done a Coronation Street and killed him off in order to pursue what he considered to be more serious writings. Then, after those books tanked, forced to backtrack a decade later, bring him back to life in the fashion of Bobby Ewing from Dallas. By now, though, he was well and truly sick to the back teeth of the world's most famous detective. There are certainly modern-day parallels to his 15-day four-centre New Zealand tour in December of 1920, to say that of the Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson. There were the ardent believers wanting front-row seats, those that couldn't care less, then the rabid sceptics and hardcore religious people who wanted the shows cancelled. In Australia, the Presbyterian Church issued a fatwa of sorts, urging followers to pray for Doyle's vessel to sink on the journey from England. and also dooming any attendees to hell's fires. New Zealand's churches were equally fervent. Eternal flames and the red-hot pokers up one's rectum would befall New Zealanders dabbling in what was little more than tantamount to devil worship, or wrote vociferous letters to the newspapers with statements like these ones in the Christchurch rags: "A blasphemy nurtured in fraud, foolish paganism." They then also protested outside theatres, which in true form only induced an early example of the Streisand effect, meant all New Zealand lectures were sold out on the back of all that free publicity, and the controversy ignited sales amongst the once uninterested. Let's skip Auckland, Wellington and Dunedin so I can get to the telepathic dog in Christchurch. Other than mentioning in Auckland, Conan Doyle spent time nattering to none other than the subject of my last video, Clement Rag, specialist subject Lost Continents and Lost Civilizations, which Doyle was also into. It was also in Auckland he'd been tipped off about Darkie. The Christchurch mutt had been making headlines in nationwide newspapers, perked Conan Doyle's interest, and he made plans to literally have a chat to the animal on his southern leg, which included Dunedin and Christchurch. For the last 6 months, the 16-year-old English terrier's uncanny abilities had intrigued the public. Feats made more spooky and perplexing by the fact the animal was almost totally deaf and blind, communicated either by tapping or barking the correct answers to basic mathematical questions like 2 plus 2, allegedly correctly guessing the ages of children. The son of the owner, who had originally rescued the dog and given it to his mum, first discovered the dog's gift when he asked the hound to bark 3 times and he'd reciprocate in kind with the same amount in biscuits. This had escalated to the point now he was trained and capable to understand a basic alphabet. That's not the half of it though. And besides being able to spell and count to the same level as a young child, Darkie was also said to be telepathic. Could, for example, correctly guess the number of coins in a stranger's pocket. Time for me to present the only known photo of the Wunderhound, Darkie. I know, you're all dying to know what he looked like. Underwhelmed? Don't you stare too long, or he'll begin talking to you at night, in your dreams. And down in Christchurch, Conan Doyle and his wife were guests of Sir Joseph and Lady Kinsey. The Kinseys had got to host a whole range of literary giants. Sir Joseph is on the right of that photo, and on the left is Sir George Bernard Shaw. Mark Twain also got a room at their Pappenny Road mansion. The Kinseys' legacy lives through to today, gifting one of the largest art collections now on the walls of the Christchurch Gallery. The shipping magnate Kinsey was knighted the year before for his work setting up Shackleton and Scott's expedition to the South Pole. We'd probably now call him a logistics manager, financial backer as well. A quick sidestep, I had to put this one in as it came up in my research. Another part of Kinsey's life that we can see today, in this case Traipse, is this cottage at Ferrymead Heritage Park in Christchurch. Whilst their mansion was pulled down to make way for motels in the early 70s, Ferrymead was able to rescue Kinsey's darkroom cum photography lab. Stunning to think of all the famous people who have walked the floorboards of this wee cottage. Big ups to Ferrymead. The lecture and tour to the local marae out of the way, that meet and greet with the local natives by the way, reinforced to him it was evident that linguistically Maori must have been part of the diaspora from the lost root civilization. Watch my last video and this will all make sense. Being drunk or high, more so. Next, Arthur was round at the McGibbons' house a couple of miles away, where he was immediately greeted by the exuberant fox terrier. The excitable Darkie began barking uncontrollably at the new guest, which even McGibbons Jr., his chief trainer, couldn't tame. All of this wasn't the best foundation for the tests the brain behind Sherlock Holmes had come up with to test the dog's powers. Roughly, these ended up being a C- result. The feisty K9 was more interested in running around than guessing how many sixpences in a half crown and the number of crowns in such and such. According to my maths, and I am a school cert failure in the subject, so I'm probably not the best authority here, the pooch did get close, embarking 10 times instead of 12 in one test. Not close enough, though, to convince Doyle the mutt had the human powers of deduction, but neither was even the opinion this was all a ruse. More of the belief that this was just a bad day at the office for Darkie. The McGibbons placated things tanking somewhat, explaining how exhibiting the dog doing his thing had resulted them raising a considerable sum for returned servicemen causes. Whether this was the case of a well-trained animal fooling everyone, or the highly unlikely option, a dog with the IQ of a 5-year-old and a good grasp of the contents of your average Oxford dictionary was alive and well, Sir Arthur left happy. No mention, though, if he ended up contributing to the fundraising. What to make of this? Talk it over with your dog and then come back to all of us in the comments. Me, I'll telepathically canvass AC/DC's long-dead dog, Roy, in the netherworld. Was your owner the full quid? Did coronavirus 19 come from the lab? Will the new New Zealand history curriculum be balanced and accurate? Should viewers shout the video creator a coffee? Good boy, good boy. Give me the winner at the next meeting at Riccarton in race 6. Just my bloody luck. He's gone and got all excitable. Bye for now.